what if I told you that there is a 5 simple tips to really learn Japanese and feel the fluency in just 2 months. So I have spent time for this 10 years teaching Japanese using like Minna no Nihongo and Genki book, which is I didn't recognize this is actually really way to really teach Japanese. And instead of using this common language apps and the textbook, there's a much better and much simple way to really learn Japanese in just 2 months. In just these 2 months I'm not telling you that you're gonna be a native Japanese. This is definitely impossible to become a native Japanese in just 2 months. I'm not also even telling you that you're gonna learn 1,000 Japanese kanji or 5,000 Japanese kanji in just 2 months. But I'm telling you that if you just simplify your study method, you can feel the fluency in Japanese, which means you can make friends in Japan, you can communicate with your Japanese friends, partner, and you can actually maybe pass the job interview, you can change your career in Japan, or you're gonna move to Japan because you find a job, you find a friend, something the life changing is gonna happen in this 2 months. Hi, my name is Terumi. I have taught more than 5,000 students in this 10 years, and also me personally, I learned Greek and English less than 10 years. And so here, what I want to say is the most efficient and fastest, effortlessly you can feel the fluency after so many years of teaching Japanese and also learning me English and Greek. I thought these common textbooks and also common language apps are really waste of my time, and it's this effort. It's just going to the garbage, which means you're gonna forget everything. When you actually really meet, you feel like you're speaking like a robot and you're not speaking naturally. So here in these 2 months, feeling the fluency is not about learning kanji, passing JLPT. It's genuinely, naturally, you feel the fluency that you are actually communicating with people. You can make a friend. You feel the connection with the people because like maybe you really feel, okay, I am truly having a natural communication without thinking about Google Translate, thinking about te form, grammar, whatever the present tense or past tense. No, I'm just genuinely talking in Japanese like my mother language. You want to genuinely feel this natural communication. So that's the goal in 2 months. And then after 2 months later, when you feel the fluency, of course, you can still keep learning. You can reach until the business level. But if you're really feeling like, oh my God, I really even can't speak 5 minutes only in Japanese without using Google Translate or without even thinking about grammar after many years of watching anime or after so many years of grammar textbook, please stop today because this study method is really not working for you and it's challenge totally different learning method. That's exactly I'm gonna talk about this today. So before talking about these 5 simple tips to really speak Japanese in 2 months, I'd like to actually focus on the time. So time is one of the biggest challenge when you are actually learning a new language because language learning itself needs lots of dedication and time, consistency, and mostly when you realize that you really want to learn the new language, even like Spanish, French, German, or Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, there is some actually gaps. Some actually language is easier because your native language is maybe similar to the language that you want to learn. Like Japanese from the native English speaker is super different. The alphabet is different. You don't know what it's even written, and also pronunciation, everything. Culture differences are huge. And the language learning, Japanese itself is super difficult. And when you don't care about the time, when you don't care about the way you study, you are just keep disappointing yourself because you are not memorizing memorizing, you spend even 5 hours of study, ending up almost you don't remember anything, and you really can't communicate with native Japanese people even 5 minutes to really hold the conversation. So that's why the biggest challenge is the time. If you're working 8 hours per day and you have a family or you have some personal things to do and you have only 1 hour to study Japanese, you can't study like a child. You can't study like elementary school student or university student like 8 hours of study, because textbooks or language apps are designed for those people who can study 8 hours per day. If you're a college student, you're a full-time student, you can spend 8 hours per day easily, because that's the job to do as a student. But if you are adult, you have a family, you have a work, you have only 1 hour to study, and you can't use those textbooks that designed for 8 hours study per day. And a lot of people don't recognize that reality. Most of people are sad about their ability. Oh, I'm too old to learn the language. I'm too old to become a bilingual because I don't really remember anything what I learned from textbook. They keep blaming themselves that I'm too old to learn the language. I can't remember. I don't understand the grammar. I keep forgetting, because you can't really expect to be fluent by using textbook just 1 hour. Furthermore, if you're actually even focusing on the 5,000 Japanese kanji, as a native Japanese, we study more than a decade to really master Japanese kanji. So, which means it's not even 1 hour commitment. It's more than 1 hour commitment every single day next 10 years. If you don't have that time for next 10 years, and you can't dedicate next 10 years like this, we need to actually really prioritize how you can really define your fluency by writing kanji or by communicating with native people. When you're really speaking with a native Japanese, the kanji is useless. You just really need to talk to people. You need to have the ability to communicate, which is speaking, understanding people, understanding cultural differences, and you need to express your feeling, like what you want and who you are. Those things are totally different skill than just spelling and the kanji one by one for next 5,000 kanji. So that's why here I'm going to talk to you. If you can't study 8 hours per day, what you have to do, you don't need to disappoint yourself. You don't need to even think that you need to study so hard. The smartest way is to learn the language, is to save your time and learn about your brain, that you actually spend, let's say 10 minutes or 20 minutes, just short time, but still you remember everything about how much you spend a time of study. So you become very efficient, you become very productive. How much you spend, you remember everything, and next day you remember what you learned, and you have actual progress every single day for next 60 days. Unstoppable. So I already talk a lot, so let's go ahead for the 5 tips to really become more fluent in Japanese this 2 months period. So the tip number 1, don't ignore the cultural differences. Do not choose any Japanese teacher does not explain the cultural differences. So why I really emphasize the cultural differences, because in the end of the day, you really want to communicate naturally with a native Japanese person. For example, you don't want to talk like, hello, my name is Terumi. How are you? Nice to meet you. When I learned English with the textbook, I really simply learned like this way. And ending up, I was like idiot, which is like so strange and not natural. No one talk like this in the States. So in the end of the day, you really want to speak like a native Japanese. You don't want to speak like a robot. So this is the reason you can't ignore the cultural differences between English culture and Japan. I can give you the one example. I have seen thousands thousands of students who even live in Japan or having studying Japanese for many years and was not sure how to use Genki. Genki is usually translated as how are you in any translation app, but you can't ignore the cultural differences. For example, in English culture, you say, hey, how are you? How's it going? You can actually use it every day. When you go to work, you can talk to the colleague, hey, how are you? How's it going? Or you can even talk to the neighbors. You can talk to your friend. No problem. But in Japan, there's a cultural difference. You don't say, how are you to a native Japanese. We don't have that culture. It's just so strange. That's the culture. Instead of actually asking, how are you? How are you? How are you every day? We maybe just talk about the weather. We talk about maybe the actual task. Yesterday, what did you do? Really depending on the occasion. But it's way different from the actual English culture that you don't ask, how are you? The feeling as Genki is not so important in Japanese culture. So that's why we don't ask every day. And more how we gonna use this Genki is like, hey, what's up? We actually didn't meet this person for 30 days or even a year. And then I was not sure if she's okay or not. And then I just ask Genki, like I can just text Genki, hey, what's up? Like it's been a while. So that's actually the meaning of Genki. So this is the reason, just about like a Genki, huge misunderstanding. For a decade, so many people actually just misunderstand for years. And Japanese people's face was like, Japanese people are so quiet. They don't really tell you what is wrong or you should do because we don't want to be rude. Just a smile. And you feel like you're not clicking, like you're not feeling the connection, like I'm not really talking, like I'm speaking always robot. If you have that feeling that you're not connecting with a native Japanese, do not ignore the cultural differences. Choose the teacher or choose the right material that can really teach you the cultural difference. And then the teacher that really can teach you how to communicate naturally, not like a Google Translate. Tip number 2, do not start from hiragana, katakana, kanji for speaking Japanese. Or do not choose a teacher who started teaching right after good morning, ohayo gozaimasu, and hiragana, katakana, kanji. Because as I mentioned, if you really want to be fluent and if you have a limited time, you can't start from hiragana, katakana, kanji because we have 5,000 characters. As a native Japanese, we dedicate for 10 years, and you can't dedicate 10 years of study plus 3-4 hours per day, right? So we need to be smart. I understand kanji is amazing, so beautiful. You want to learn kanji, but also you have a limited time. You don't want to wait to be fluent next to 10 years. You're just waiting and then writing kanji every day. That's not a realistic study plan. So we need to actually really see that what is a realistic study plan, and you can really make a friend. You can feel the connection with native Japanese by speaking. It's not about kanji. It's about the culture understanding. It's about your actual pronunciation. It's about sentence structure, how you can form the sentence, how you can express yourself, feeling, your personality, your background, how to really make a friend, to talk about something fun, to talk about something interesting. That's so important than just writing, spelling, kanji. So that's why do not choose any Japanese teacher who just start hiragana, katakana, kanji. And then you start more focusing on actual communication like a baby Japanese, The babies in Japan, we start from speaking, listening with the parents before learning kanji. So that's why we need to start this baby step to really focus improvement of your listening and speaking and communication skills. Tip number 3. Do not start or too much focus on grammar in Japanese, or do not choose the teacher that is heavily focused on grammar test. There's a lot of reason that I'm telling you here. So when I actually start learning English in the public school in Japan, we actually learn so much grammar structure, like present tense, past tense, future tense, a lot of, small differences in the grammar rules. And still, after learning English and Greek, and I understand it's more European language, it's systematic language. There is a single, plural, past tense, future tense, but also more simplified grammar. grammar, that you don't have millions of layers of different politeness. But in Japanese, totally different language. We have millions of layers of politeness. You can be super polite, you can be super rude. You can be like a child, you can speak like a politician. That's the samurai period, samurai Japanese. We have totally different way of speak depending on your position, depending on who you are talking to. You want to respect, you want to be humble. That's the beauty of Japanese culture, but also very complex language. And then you are learning Japanese like English grammar, that you're just summarizing so much information you got, and still you're not really confidently say the reason why I'm studying Japanese is this. You still are not confident to really form the sentence perfectly. This is a reason you can't really say the sentence perfectly. This is a reason you can't really communicate in Japanese. And this is a reason you can't really hold the conversation for just 5 minutes confidently to really just make a friend. So do not focus on the grammar. Better focus on Japanese culture, politeness, and the sentence structure depending on the context. Why context or situational language is Japanese? The sentence itself is simple, but also complex depending on who you're talking to. So when you're actually speaking or learning Japanese with just like an English mind, your focus is totally wrong. Your focus must be what is a natural way, being more polite or being more respectful or being more friendly. You really need to understand. Then you will see what is a common sentence structure. So do not focus on grammar like English. Do not choose the teacher that is just focusing on the grammar. Tip number 4, instead of focusing on too much book study, focus on the pronunciation and listening. So there are millions of material in 2024. You can really buy a lot of textbook from Amazon. You can learn kanji, you can learn grammar, you can actually read some dialogue, plus a lot of language apps available, but also sucking your time that you don't really feel the progress after so many hours of study. So simply, we need to go back how you really learn the native language. When we are babies, you actually really communicate with the parents by listening and imitating the mother's pronunciation, the father's pronunciation. That's why if you really grow up in the States, you have American accent. But if you grow up in the UK, you have a British accent. No one actually really teach. You actually really imitate how people surrounded you really pronounce it. So that's actually imitation, and that's how you really become a native person and you got the mother language. So when you are adult, you actually want to learn the second language, third language, especially Japanese. It's a really difficult language. You are just totally focusing on the book, or your teacher is just really following the page of the page study and really not improving your listening or your pronunciation. I can give you one example. For example, a lot of students didn't really understand the differences between 出身どこですか? Where are you from? Versus 主人. 主人 is actually prisoner. Those small listening difference or pronunciation difference has a huge impact in the everyday life. Other things like かわいいですね. Oh wow, you're so cute. To 怖いですね. Scary. かわいい, cute versus 怖い, scary. How you pronounce it, you can be very idiot. Like, I am from prisoner and you are scary. You wanted to say I am from the States, you're so cute. It's so different sentence because you just really didn't pronounce correctly. And a lot of language teachers are not really focusing on train your pronunciation. You really don't know how to pronounce correctly. And because you're not pronouncing correctly, people are just replying to you, what did you say? So that's why, of course, again, you have a problem of the communication. So do not choose a teacher or any material that really not helping or correcting your pronunciation or improvement of listening pronunciation. Tip number 5. Overall, what do you really need to be fluent in Japanese in 2 months is do not study, train yourself, or do not choose the teacher who just make you study, not train you. So there is a huge differences between passive learning and active learning. I really just didn't recognize I didn't need to study the language. I just needed to train myself to really pronounce correctly or speak faster or to entertain people. In the end of the day, what is the purpose of communication? Is to build a trust or to entertain people or to build a connection with the people. You don't need to show off your smartness, or you don't need to be a robot and ending up super boring person. So the communication, you can't study the communication. You actually really need to do the training. So it's like a passive learning, which is just a studying, which is like you're looking at the teacher, or your teacher is just to make you study, okay, do this homework, but you're really not communicating in Japanese. You're just looking at the book, you're just writing the book. This is a passive learning. Active learning is try and error, and then so your teacher or your actual society is really train you, which is you actually receiving the feedback. Oh wow, you're pronouncing correctly. This is the actual training, and by doing it, you improve it, you're gonna learn it. So that's why if you want to be able to speak Japanese confidently and you want to feel the fluency, you need to meet a native Japanese, you need to talk and you need to pronounce, and this your native Japanese or teacher or any specialist need to give you the actual feedback. That's how you grow up when you're a child. So that's actually how you train yourself. Definitely you can learn. You don't forget about your mother language word, but you can't learn Japanese word, then your study method is wrong. You can remember English, you can remember Japanese too. So 2024, enjoy your study and choose the right study method, choose the best teacher, and make the progress. But if you really can't find the best teacher, best environment around you, you can also contact me and really learn and focus and enjoy the progress in just 2 months.